on this road to happiness.
Okay, so this is gonna have to be one of the fastest reviews I have ever done because I have something that was supposed to have started right now but is being delayed, so I'm gonna try to squeeze this in because if I don't do it now, it's not gonna get done. Thank you to a cranberry margarita. Thankfully, I'm not drinking this because it's a bad book. I just had some cranberry margarita stuff left over, so I made one. Today's book is You Have a Match by Emma Lord. I've never read anything by her. I don't know what kind of author she is. I think she is a traditionally published author, but I've seen a crap ton about her on social media. I don't trust Bookstagram. I just don't. Books that people talk about on social media, I tend not to like. Partially, it's because a lot of that book talk is self-published, which nothing against self-published authors. I would love to self-publish Novaturian, but there tends to be a distinct quality difference just because of the lack of resources. How expensive it is to get all of the editing and cover art and every little thing that goes into making a self-published book as clean and polished as a traditionally published book, it's mind-blowingly expensive. So that, yes, not to say it's not a good product, but there is a distinct difference. Anyways, Emma Lord was somebody that I put on my TBR because she writes not necessarily sappy books, but they're not heavy-hitting books. They are beach reads, guilty pleasures, things that you can get through really quickly, and I like the premises. I don't get around to them because I'm worried that they're gonna be stinky, that they're gonna be cliched. For some reason, I had put this one on hold in Libby, and Libby said, hey, you know what? It's ready for you. And I said, well, I just finished another book, so I'll start it. I think I finished it in 4 days, so that says a lot. And the book is about, oh my gosh, I forgot her name as well. Abigail Day. She has 2 best friends, Connie and Leo. She is from this rowdy household. Her grandfather has recently died, and for some reason, her parents are laying down the law academically, which coincides with the fact that she's not doing well academically. But Leo is Filipino, and he and his sister are full-blooded siblings, but they had been adopted in infancy. He has always had this interest in where he came from and who his family is. So he got the 2 girls, Connie and Abby, to take a DNA test with him. Abby has developed a crush on Leo. So things have, for, I don't know, six-ish months, I guess this is kicking in, 6-ish months have been awkward, at least according to Abby. There is the BEI, the big embarrassing incident, which we don't know what it is at first, but it's referenced too often. However, the DNA test turned out, anyways, the results have come in. Now, Connie and Abby are headed over to Leo's house, only for Connie to be like, actually, I can't make it. So Abby shows up and she's like, oh my gosh, this is awkward. She's looking at the results, and this took me a minute because I was listening to it and I guess I zoned out. My thought was that she was looking at his results, and now she's having this over-the-top reaction, and she's like, I've got to get out of here. And I was like, is he your brother? Do you have a crush on your brother? Like, what's going on here? Turns out she was actually looking at her own results. I guess she had gotten a message, and it was from a girl named Savvy, who is a social media influencer, and they are full-blooded siblings. They are full-blooded. They're full-blooded siblings. This knocks Abby for a loop because she's like, this girl's older than me. That means my parents had a daughter before they had me. What is going on here? They meet up. They decide they are going to go to the same camp. Abby's parents had been like, Camp Reynolds. This place will prepare you academically. And she's like, absolutely not. Turns out that this is where Savvy is going to be a junior camp counselor. They decide to go. And around the same time, Abby reveals to us, at least, that she has failed English, which means summer school. Somehow she's able to manipulate everything so that her parents don't find out, and she runs off to camp. She lives in Seattle. She's on the ferry, crossing the Puget Sound, and who's on that ferry with her? Leo. And you know what? Leo is going to the same camp as her, and she's like, how in the world is this happening? You're going to Camp Evergreen. I'm going to Camp Reynolds. Turns out Camp Evergreen, which is where he has gone his entire life, has just been bought out and reconfigured, which that I did not understand. Like, it was such a minor part of this novel. I did not understand why it had to be a factor at all. There are some moments where, like, she gets there and she befriends the only people who are her age, and all these girls are like academically advanced, yet they don't want to be at this academic camp. Abby, because there are technical difficulties or something, like there's something going on with the computer system and the emails, she convinces them to pretend like they're on a different track so that they can participate in regular camp activities versus the academic camp activities. They are eventually found out, reset onto the right track, and very early on in the novel, when she has just arrived at this camp, she's receiving demerits because she is going against camp rules, like chewing bubble gum, because she never read the camp rules, and so now she's getting in trouble, and it's causing issues between her and Savvy and issues with the camp owner, Victoria. And I was just like, but the academic part had so little to do with this entire summer, it was superfluous. In any case, yes, he is going to be a chef because he likes to cook. He is a chef at this camp, so now she's gonna spend the whole camp with her, or the whole summer with her crush. And I gotta say, I am 95% sure that the summary that I read was that she was going to be spending this entire summer with her new boyfriend. Spoiler here, they didn't even get together till the end of the novel. I don't know what boyfriends is referring to. Then again, I think I saw this summary on Goodreads, so maybe it wasn't Flapjacket summary, it was actually just somebody's Goodreads summary. But usually when you go on Goodreads, that summary, that initial summary next to the book, is the Flapjacket summary. They are all at camp together. Abby realizes she does not like Savvy. And this was another thing I thought was kind of misleading, was the summary made it sound like they're complete opposites, and that Savvy is this tyrant who's a rule follower, and she is. It didn't feel as severe as the book jacket made it out to be. It was more like they're just different kinds of people, and Abby doesn't like to abide by the rules, and so she butts heads with Savvy, which I think makes complete sense. Savvy is tasked with doing this certain job. If you are under her purview, well, then of course she's gonna bust you for the things you're not doing. And one thing I wish we got more of was the sisterly aspect, where yes, they're strangers and they don't know each other, and they're finding out that they are complete opposites. But instead of it being like, we're mortal enemies because you are my foe, I wish it had been like sisterly rivalry, you know? Where we're sisters and we don't get along. And so we're just impressing this point of, she never had a sister. Now she has the sister she's always wanted, and they're not getting along, but it's basically what she wanted. It's the interactions she always would have had Savvy been in her life this entire time. I wish that had been emphasized more than like, oh, Savvy is so type A and a tyrant, and I don't understand her granola eating healthy lifestyle Instagram message, which is another thing. And this is just a personal thing because I like social media in the sense that it's storytelling. What I dislike about social media is we all have to have a platform. We all have to have a story to tell. It's that fame monster that bothers me, where we have a platform because of the fame monster. Why can't social media just be true to who you are versus what the perception you're trying to get out there to propel you in whichever avenue you're trying to make money? All of the girls that Abby has now become friends with who are in her cabin are all, I forget the term for them, but they all adore Savvy. They're like Savvy worshipers because of her Instagram. And so they're talking about how they're like figuring out their platform. So like 17 years old. And they've already mapped out exactly what they want to do, what their Instagram platform is. So I did not understand, and this could be me just not understanding how all this social media stuff works. If you already know the content you want to produce, why aren't you producing it? If you have outlined what you want to do, why are you still in the ideating phase? It's like they're pre-planning. It's like they're still prepping because they don't know what they want to do. And this is where Savvy is going to come in because she's going to be holding workshops and things, and they can't wait to take her workshops so that they can learn about how to create their platform. Well, it sounds like you pretty much have your platformed out. They're not saying, oh, I have no idea what I want to do. What? There are a lot of hijinks that ensue in which basically it's sibling rivalry, where Savvy will do one thing and then Abby will do something to get back at her. But then the overarching issue of this novel, the whole reason they both went to camp together, was to figure out why they're full-blooded siblings, why there are even more, why there are brothers, yet Savvy was the one that is not part of the family. The whole thing is really to figure out what happened so that Savvy was given up for adoption. And my big issue, my big question with this is, how do they think they're going to get this information at camp? There's no cell reception, one computer for internet. How do they think that they're going to get their answers if the only possible people with answers are both sets of parents? If they're not talking to their parents, it's not like their parents are running this camp. That was a huge flaw in the plan for me. If Abby didn't know she had a sister, Savvy knew she was adopted, but if she didn't have any information from her adoptive parent, what did they think they're gonna figure out? They have all of these head bumping moments, and there's all of this like mixed signal, will they, won't they, between Abby and Leo. And that's one thing I really liked. And then it really frustrated me because it was obvious what signals were there, but there was always a moment, a very valid reasoning for why maybe the signals Abby thought she was getting, she wasn't. Like the thing that he had, because he'd grown up with Savvy. So I thought that was really cool too, where how he had grown up with both sisters and he had no idea they were sisters. And so this person that she had grown up hearing about from his camp story days, she had no clue that that was her sister. But it's like, okay, so Savvy tells Abby, well, he did express to me that there was a moment, because the big embarrassing incident is that Abby had almost kissed Leo. They got interrupted. She comes back from it and she's talking to Connie. Connie reveals to her, oh, well, I actually just had a conversation with him before this incident, and he says he's not interested in you that way. So now Abby's like, wow, I almost made this big mistake. How are we going to deal with it as with this friendship? Now, Savvy is telling her, he did tell me that there was something that happened that was a mistake that he didn't fix. And so Abby's thinking, oh, it must have been the big embarrassing incident. Only for her, she's gonna work up the courage. She's gonna tell him how she feels. But she has just done this polar bear swim, which means she swam in a really cold lake. And so she's shivering so much that she can't get the words out. So he's like, well, why don't I tell you my news? And she's like, oh my gosh, he's gonna tell me the same thing, that he likes me. Only for him to tell her that he had gotten into a culinary school halfway across the country. And she's like, oh, well, that is the thing that he almost missed out on, because it was something he didn't think he'd get accepted into, so he almost didn't apply. Now that he found out he's gotten in, like, that's the thing, not me. So it's things like that where you're just like, well, maybe he doesn't like her. I enjoyed the lack of cheese. Let's just put it that way. We go through the summer and the girls finally are coming to terms with each other when both parents show up. And then at the moment that they see each other, they both leave. And now the girls are like, what? So then they both come back a little wishy-washy for me. Now they're angry, or at least Savvy's parents are angry at Abby's parents because apparently they had gotten lawyers involved. They had drawn up this contract. And so the biological parents are in breach of contract for coming within reach of Savvy, which technically Savvy's 18, so they're not in breach of anything. And so this is something that I thought was a little outlandish, was their reaction. And maybe it's because I don't understand, I can't fully comprehend the magnanimity of the situation. Here's just a big spoiler. And as much as I liked this book, I thought that the whole reason, the rationale behind Savvy being adopted was weak. Their parents, the bio parents, got married young because bio dad had a heart condition. It was fatal. This is the 90s. Somehow he got into some kind of trial or some kind of experimental treatment, which, ta-da, cured him. So he didn't die. But in this interim, Maggie, the mother, had gotten pregnant. But in the face of losing her husband, she was like, I can't possibly raise this child. What they decide is to give their child to their best friends who are unable to have children. Then, when he's not gonna die, she gives birth and they try to rescind on the agreement and they try to take Savvy out of the hospital. Whatever I had read about this book made it sound far more nefarious than what actually happened. I was expecting something much bigger, but this then makes the friends upset, which naturally so, but I was like, it happens all the time where birth mothers decide to keep their child. I thought that was tenuous at best. This whole situation of his heart condition being lethal, fatal, only for him to miraculously be cured, and then they decide to keep their child. And yes, like if they were physically trying to remove this child without telling the friend, doing it illegally, I get it. That's a big thing. But this is where lawyers get involved. This is where bad blood happens. And this is where they never speak to each other again until Savvy and Abby find each other. But then it's like very, very obvious that Savvy and Abby are behind everything, yet Savvy's parents continue to blame everything on the birth parents. It's obvious, and both girls are telling you they had nothing to do with it. We're the ones that are setting everything up. We're the ones who set up going to camp together. We're the ones who, after you guys fell out upon re-seeing each other, were like, oh hey, let's hatch a plan to get them back into the same space. None of this is the bio parents doing. Blown out of proportion. And then what happens is Savvy is in a relationship. They break up. At this point also, Abby had said some choice words to Savvy, but then Savvy's given her a phone call, but she can't answer because she's trying to help this guy out of a tree, which sounds silly. If I had more time, I'd give you more info. But she can't answer. She's like this great tree climber, yet she loses her grip and she falls and she breaks her arm or her wrist, which I'm just saying, I've been there. I broke them both at one time. And the fact that she's just like trooping along like nothing's wrong, I get it. She's had a lot of scrapes and bruises. She's used to it. But I found it highly implausible that she's just like, oh, it's nothing. Especially because every single person from then on out is like, oh my gosh, what happened to your arm? I enjoy a strong woman. I thought that was highly unbelievable though. Next day, someone comes to her and it's like, hey, have you seen Savvy? And she's like, no. She ends up going to where Savvy is. What happened is that Savvy had fallen, it was like muddy. So she had fallen down this incline and she couldn't get up. Well, wouldn't you know, Abby falls down this incline too. So now they're stuck for hours. The parents come in and find them. Things get sorted out. We learn all about what happened between the parents and how the parents became friends in the first place. Abby and Leo get together. Savvy gets into her new relationship with her BFF that she's been tiptoeing around for years. So they're all tied up. At the end, the thing about Poppy is that he had owned a cafe he dies. Now the cafe is going to be sold, but the parents all met because of this cafe. So now Savvy's parents, who are uber wealthy, decide to buy the cafe, turn it into this food art fusion thing that they had planned to do before the falling out. This is where Abby's, she's a photographer, this is where all of her stuff is being displayed. She now has this massive following on Instagram, all this stuff, things coming full circle. We learn, and this was something that I thought took far too long to be explained, why her grades are so poor. And it's because once her grandfather died, she kind of lost focus. Like, it affected her. And she just didn't see the point in certain things. And then her parents were so overbearing about making sure her grades were so great and blah, 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 that it had an adverse effect. And I was just like, that was it? So I liked this book. Again, I liked the book. I thought it was cute. I loved the personalities. The characters were fantastic. I did find some issues with the plotting and the rationale. There we go. That's it. I've got things to do. So if you have questions, let me know. Bye. The whole thing with Abby and Leo and the miscommunication, it turns out a lot of it was due to Connie, and Connie was someone that I wished I'd gotten more of. She kind of felt like an afterthought. She was instrumental in the miscommunication because, as I said, Abby had told her, oh, this is what happened. She lied to Abby, and she had said she'd had a conversation that had never been had. But then on the other side of things, she had told Leo, oh, well, Abby doesn't like you either. So even though he'd had a crush on Abby, now they're thinking, oh, he or she doesn't like me, and so it's not going to happen. So I'm thinking, oh, well, this is great. You know, this is a nice little love triangle because, of course, that means Connie is in love with Leo. Now she's trying to sabotage things. It turns out, really, no, Connie just was trying to make things better, and she didn't. I don't know if Lord is trying to hint at Connie being asexual, because she does make a mention of, well, I've never had those kinds of feelings. If she was, I think the way it was done and to the extent that it was explored, it didn't need to be there. If it was really just like, oh, I'm a teenage girl who's never been in love, that's something else. In any case, it was a comment that I felt was out of place in the grand scheme of things. But yes, I almost forgot to fill you in on the fact that big lack of communication, because Connie said things that weren't true. It could have been really interesting, turned out to not be as interesting, but it furthered the story. So there we go. Now, bye.